Yeah, Grush said there's frozen bodies.
Yeah, yeah.
And that there's a crash retrieval program.
Crash retrieval, that was a big one. That caused a big stir. It's been running for decades, he said. I think he said that the government, in his opinion, based on his interviews, as he was working, I think, with the National Reconnaissance Office, and he was tasked with going around and, identifying the programs that were related to UAPs. He said that the U.S. government was likely aware of non-human activities since like the 1930s. Now, what I would say is, based on my years of experience with the government, it's really hard for them to keep a secret, right? And that's a monumental secret. And at some point, it's human activity and human nature. Someone's going to open up their pie hole and talk.
Wasn't that what Bob Lazar did?
Yeah, yeah.
And now when you pay attention to some of the video footage that has been released about these unidentified objects, and when you listen to what Bob Lazar said about how these things operate, it mimics that. Not only that, like the way he described the propulsion method.
Whoa. That's a
good save.
Yeah, thank you very much. I set the whole studio on fire.
It mimics what he said. He also talked about, that there was some possibility that there was this crash retrieval program is what he was working on, but he said there was some talk about biological entities.
Yeah, yeah, and there's mixed feelings about how how reliable Bob Lazar was. I mean, sorry.
Yeah.
And so, but it's not a new assertion, right? I mean, there's been talk about this before. So,
but that's my point about secrecy.
Yeah, and I think, but if that's, I guess, my point on that is, not only that people can't keep their pile shut, but there would have been more detailed information. That something would have come out. That again, that's my own feeling. I just have a hard time believing the government is that good at keeping a secret, right? Sometimes it just seems like they can't organize panic in a doomed submarine. So I think that's, from my perspective, that's a question mark, right? Could they keep this secret that they've got frozen bodies of aliens sitting somewhere?
Wouldn't you imagine, though, that if there was something like that, that the level of attention to detail to protect secrecy would be significantly ramped up? This wouldn't be something as simple as developing a new fighter jet where, you have these you essentially have these corporations that design these vehicles for the U.S. government. You have defense contractors. And one of the assertions was that these are the people that have access to these things because they're trying to back engineer it. And if you were going to back engineer it, you would do so under the guise of someone who makes those things. It's not like the government themselves are the engineers and the people that are involved. It's people that work for the government and often defense contractors.
Well, contractors, government entities, agencies.
Right.
I mean, look, the CIA was responsible for locating the ground where Area 51 sits, right? All those years ago. So they would have a role to play. You're right. The commercial world would have a role to play. The defense contractors. Others, I'm sure. I mean, it becomes a growing circle of people who would be involved in an effort like that.
But it'd be a fun secret to keep.
It'd be a hell of a secret to keep. But
that would be a fun one.
Yeah.
If you're working on something like that, boy, could I tell you some shit.
You go home, the kids say, "What'd you do today, Dad?" And you're like,
I touched metal that's from another planet.
Yeah, I dissected an alien.
They 3D printed model designed to house 3-foot tall creatures from another galaxy.
But but I think we do also tend to imagine. Look, we can only when we look at when Fravor. It was interesting. Fravor looks at the Tic Tac, right? And Dietrich, and they're looking at this and they're trying to interpret it based on what we know right now, right? So our technological limitations, right, kind of define how we imagine things could go, right? But we only know physics in the way that we know it, right? So it is interesting to think about how we put it, which is how you ended up with little green men, right? Well, if they're aliens, they probably look like us, sort of, but let's make them a little different, let's make them 3 foot tall. But who knows what the hell it looks like out there, right? And it's just, but I guess, we've explored so little of space, right? I mean, we still don't know what's, in all the oceans, right? We're still surprised when we find something in the oceans.
Well, that's what's fascinating also about these stories, that there seems to be these vehicles that can travel into the water as well.
Yeah.
And this has been documented by video as well.
Yeah, and that's what they first noticed, right? I mean, with the Tic Tac was they noticed a disturbance in the water, right? The water was roiling, and they said the weather was perfect, right? There were no white caps, there was nothing. There was just this one area of disturbance, and that was the first thing they noticed. And then they saw the whatever it was. But again, I go back to like okay, I'm buying what Fravor's selling, right? It's just that then we don't have what's at the end of that dotted line. We don't know what it is, but I'm glad that we're exploring it in a more serious way now. I'm glad that the Pentagon, to at least, and maybe it happens incrementally, right? But at least they've come out now. They said, okay, we have ATIP, or the Advanced Aeronautical Threat Identification Program, which supposedly shut down in 2012 or so, 2012, I think it was. Of course, they didn't shut it down, right? They just put it into a different program, and because the threat was still there, right? There's still concern over, okay, what is flying over particularly sensitive facilities, right? There was that swarming, right? Or the swarm that went around the USS Omaha,
right?
I think,
the ones that look like pyramids.
Yeah, yeah. And so there were like 9 of them, or I think at a maximum there were 9 of them, and they still haven't figured out what the hell that is.
But did those things exhibit in any sort of capabilities that are beyond our imagination? I don't think they operated at an insane
movement. Not necessarily. They disappeared in a way that couldn't be explained, right? And a couple of them appeared to just go into the water. To your point about there's been those incidents.
Trans-medium devices.
So and they did have radar imagery on these items, but and I think so. Anyway, what they might be, again, it's nothing was solved as a result of the hearing, right? Obviously, and I think people were excited, and they're always excited when there's going to be something like this.